Hi and welcome to episode 23 of The Party Line. This episode was recorded on Indigenous land. We stand in solidarity with our Indigenous brothers and sisters in their struggle against racism and capitalism.
Yeah, we got a taste of it this week with the police in Sydney. Yeah, fucking hell.
Oh my darling, oh my darling, oh my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.
Okay, well, we are recording this podcast sans Jordy for the bulk of it. He joins us in a moment when we're talking with Josh Lees. We obviously did just record a podcast, but the demonstrations that happened in Sydney on Monday evening, the day that Herzog arrived, were marked by extreme police violence, which you could describe as a police riot.
Absolutely.
So we wanted to do, it's episode 23, but it's also like bonus episode kind of, responding to things as they unfold. So the camera angle is really bad. I might include a photo of the tripod situation that I tried to set up.
I mean, it's a very progressive tripod. There's like pro-trans rights. There's, you know,
stuff about women's oppression.
Yeah, heaps of cool stuff.
But then as I was recording, my phone ran out of storage.
I was literally warning her that could happen as she discovered that it had happened.
Yeah.
So, yeah. That's
So
all right.
the angle is from my computer.
It's a bit home brand. I
And
presume the quality is a bit crap as well.
The quality is probably terrible. So if you're a Spotify listener, don't worry about any of this. But if you're a
You're
YouTube
sweet.
listener, we do apologise. So on the podcast today, we're going to be interviewing Josh Lees from Palestine Action Group Sydney, a Socialist member. And then Omar's also lined up an interview with someone from Muslim Votes Matters.
Ghaith Krayem, yeah, he's one of their spokespeople.
So it's a bit of a bumper episode to talk about it. But I suppose, Omar, like, it is really crazy what's going on. Like we talked about in the last episode, there's just this, it feels like a society-wide from the top just attack on the right to protest and on the Palestine movement.
Absolutely. I mean, we've all been watching what's been happening in the US with ICE and all the raids and stuff, but the response to Herzog's visit from the establishment and from the police last night in Sydney just gives you a sense of how quickly things can flip. You know, Australia goes from being the lucky country, democracy, not like over there, you know, Labor governments wall to wall pretty much. And then when something that really matters to them happens, they're prepared to just throw out every democratic precedent, right, and just go for the jugular, basically. And they, you know, we'll talk about this, but they were just like assaulting people while they prayed. They were assaulting elected MPs who you think have some sort of political shielding, brutalizing people. They hospitalized like multiple people, very old people. They arrested like 30 people, all on the most minimal charges. Like assault police sounds serious, but basically that's like the most minimal charge. It's you basically get, every time the police arrest you, they charge you with assault. It's basically just like the charge that means you've been arrested.
Yeah, and I think that the violence that was displayed in New South Wales, it's not necessarily unique. There's obviously lots of examples of police violence and police brutality. In Melbourne last year at the Land Forces demonstration, there was obviously quite
Crazy.
high-level attack on people.
Stun grenades and shit.
Stun grenades. They have like
Oh yeah, those rubber things, the bullets.
rubber bullets, and then assault rifles that have pepper spray pellets in them, which just choke the air. One of the things, though, about the Land Forces protest, I don't know if you remember, is that a lot of the police that were actually at that demonstration brutalising people were the New South Wales police.
I can fucking believe that.
Yeah.
That they have a glint in their eye, the riot cops from Sydney.
Yeah.
They just like stand there chewing gum. Like they look like they've all taken speed.
People were saying there's seems to be a fashion trend in amongst the New South Wales police of a sort of small moustache.
Yeah.
I
can believe that.
But
well, one of them actually had a tattoo.
Yeah.
Like a fascist tattoo. We'll put it on the screen. Like, yeah. I mean, it makes sense, right? Like ICE in America, these kind of positions, they attract the scum of the earth. Like, who wants to be a cop? What do you do? Either you're doing a really boring job of just like finding people for speeding or not wearing their seatbelt, or like taking photos of their house when they've been robbed and never solving the crime, or you're doing a really bad job of like harassing protesters and strikers and stuff. So yeah, it attracts either dullards or thugs or both.
Yeah, totally. And the backdrop to this whole attack on innocent protesters, people who have the democratic right to go out into the streets and protest against a genocide, is this framing of social cohesion from the Labor government. There was a good political cartoon from Pat Hudson, and it was a picture of a sort of very greyish looking Anthony Albanese arm in arm with Isaac Herzog. Behind it, a crowd of protesters getting brutalised, and the caption is, "We couldn't do this without you."
Yeah. I think it's like the fact that Labor's like put the Israeli flag on their mast basically and said, we're going to go out on a political limb to shepherd this war criminal around the country. They're getting blowback now, and it's exciting that so many people mobilise. I mean, we've started with Sydney because that's the big story, but huge demonstrations in every city. Everywhere where there were demonstrations, they were really large, like some of the biggest those places have ever had.
I was shocked in Melbourne, like, because Omar was chairing the demonstration. So Omar was up on Flinders Street steps, getting everything ready for that. I had the luxury of just getting to walk around and sort of see the crowd and look at all the people. By about 5 o'clock, it was already really, really difficult to move through Flinders Street Station. And then by 5:30, it was like you couldn't move, which for people who haven't had the, opportunity to go to some of the Melbourne protests, people sort of learnt a bit of a lesson, which is the speeches are very long. And so there's like...
people come late.
There's a tradition of people coming late to those demonstrations. For this one, it was like as soon as you finished work, you like raced out the door to try and get to this demonstration.
And that's always a sign that it's like not just the inner sanctum of the movement, because people who know, like you don't turn up for an hour before the rally, like after the rally's meant to start, if you just want to be there for the march. But this was a really wide spectrum of the public who turned up. A lot of totally first-time people. We got stopped going home on the train by like 3 different groups saying thanks so much.
Speaking of that, I was getting like dumplings or whatever, wonton soup, and a comrade wearing a Victorian Socialist t-shirt came in a little bit after we did, and some of the patrons of the store noticed this comrade wearing a Victorian Socialist tee, and they were like, "Were you at the rally? Oh, we couldn't get to it. We love the Socialists. We love the Palestine rally. We're so upset we couldn't get... I need to buy you dinner." And paid for the dinner. And it was just like these 3 sort of like middle-aged looking guys. But like they were so moved by the whole thing. So
it was a mass event. Like, and the numbers all around the country are really good. Like, I think they said 5,000 in Adelaide, which is really big, 3,000 in Canberra.
The Brisbane rally, people said 5K, but it looked way bigger than that to me.
It looked really big, yeah. And then Perth, I don't have the figures, but I think one of their biggest in Asia. So then there's all the small places, which do matter as well. So it was a truly national event, and a massive embarrassment. And we succeeded in the sense that every single news outlet, the protests and the visit were like equally present, which if we'd done nothing, it just would have been a tour about Israel and how great it is and how important Israel is for every Australian Jew and so on. Whereas this protest forced the issue of Palestine back on the agenda. You compare the press conference in the morning where all the journalists are just asking Herzog how he's feeling, why Israel is so important to Jews and so on, compared to today and last night where Palestine was clearly front and center and the lengths to which the New South Wales government in particular was going to block peaceful protests. Like, we have changed the whole politics of this tour, and that is something we can all be proud of.
Because I think that's important, because there's obviously 2 sides of the picture coming out of the unfolding Sydney situation. One of the sides is the fact that the police have brutalised people, done it with impunity. When we talk to Josh, we'll talk about some of the more specificities of why the police were able to do this. So there's that. But on the other hand, there is just this outrage. Like, David Shoebridge shared a video of of the man in the sort of business attire just getting pummeled. I have seen this shared far and wide. So many people are posting about it. Some commentators that are a little bit more like in the mainstream, like that Mike Carlton guy, he's just like posting about how terrible it is. And
The SMH had it in their live feed.
Yeah. So it's sort of like, it's this dynamic that keeps on presenting itself in the context of the Palestine stuff and the government's attempts to undermine it, especially in the context of the Bondi stuff, where it's this trying to use the political moment to push against us, to push us down, to demonize us, to try and kick us off the streets. But then a constant overplaying of the hand, like a sort of misunderstanding of the political capital that they have acquired. So one of it is like the inviting Chris Minns, and then the second one...
Inviting Herzog.
I keep on doing that.
They're both very bad people.
Inviting Isaac Herzog to the country. And then the second one is just the brutalization. So it really does feel like a sort of push and pull kind of situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like the Writers' Festival, you know? Like Malinauskas intervened hard to get Randa Abdel Fattah kicked out. Then, you know, people take a stand and it just snowballs, and then suddenly she's the victim, she's getting invited back. Basically, the festival goes ahead without the government's involvement. She's now being invited to like every festival in the country. Her book's a bestseller. It was a massive victory for our side. And for her, but for the Palestine movement broadly, and a massive own goal. And this is similar, I think. Like, they thought they could just make this a tour about mourning and loving Israel. And instead, it's a question now about democracy, about genocide, about police brutality. And again, we have done that collectively as a movement. Like, people cannot... Sometimes it feels like you push shit uphill, you turn up to protest, what difference does it make? And it's true that like we can't necessarily stop every war immediately or whatever, but we can change things and we can push them back. And I think, you know, I've had a conversation with Victorian police, you know, in advance of the rally in Melbourne, and they've already indicated they're very keen to avoid the kind of scenes. Now, who knows? You know, you can't trust them fully, but I think the power of the numbers of people, the backlash that has been received, has clearly put everyone on notice. And even the New South Wales police now are under extreme pressure, as is Chris Minns, for their behaviour.
And I feel the Sydney demonstration could have been even larger if not for the physical like barriers that were put up from people being able to attend, like the limiting of the trains going into the city, the fear that they put into people, but then also the physical blocks of cops stopping people from going from, I'm not actually super familiar with Sydney geography, but George Street into the Martin Place area. Town Hall. But isn't Martin Place next to Town Hall?
Not really.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway.
It's part of the city loop, but it's not. But yeah, they also they encourage everyone to work from home.
Yeah.
So like, the capitalists have been fighting desperately to get us all into the offices in the city. You know, think about all the businesses, think about the office, investors who want to make their money. So there's been this huge push for years since COVID. And then it's suddenly, everyone please stay home. Yeah. We're locking down the whole city. We know we complain about blocking the Harbour Bridge for 20 minutes, but we're going to shut down the whole city for 4 days to facilitate this demo, you know. So there was a lot of things that they were up against in Sydney. And you know, getting whatever it was, 20, 30, 50,000, the number varies, but it was huge, you know. Like, I remember when we used to fill Town Hall, we would say, 30, 40,000, and then sometimes it overflowed, like the big marriage equality one. So this was a huge demonstration. These don't happen very often. And it was in the face of extreme moral intimidation and blackmail.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to take us back to the social cohesion thing, though, because I actually think the social cohesion thing that Labor are pushing, because so there's all of the authoritarianism that's going on around the world, and I don't want to underplay or downplay sort of what's going on in Australia or what happened in New South Wales against the protesters, but I think that the Labor Party writ large, the social cohesion thing means something different to them. It means trying to revive a politics that isn't fit for the current age.
Politeness. Don't talk politics or religion. Just, talk about sport.
So it's like, I have like this gesture in my head that I imagine them doing, which is just sweep it away. Like, that's what they want to do. Like, they want to sweep away the Palestine movement so that they can return to a sensible politics. You know, they want capital and business to just carry on as usual. They don't want protests in the city every week. But because the Palestine movement has actually an incredible amount of depth in comparison to where we were, say, 5 years ago with the Palestine movement. It actually requires a real authoritarianism to achieve that. So it's sort of like their methods and their goals are sort of not totally in line.
Yeah, totally. And then there's also differences. Like Chris Minns is clearly like just ultra aggressive, ultra pro-Israel, ultra right wing.
Yeah.
You know, like the Labor governments everywhere have been introducing anti-protest laws and stuff like that. But he seems to relish it. You know, like for him, it's like every time he can go up against the movement, it's like, yes, sweet. Yeah. I want to fucking get these people. And the thing is, like Josh talks about, they talked themselves into a corner, you know, because the movement kept saying, we just want to have a peaceful protest. We're not going to target Herzog's venue or whatever. We're actually marching away from it, but we just want to have a mass protest. And no, we're not going to the middle of nowhere in some park. They said no. 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 At the last minute, they implemented these extreme laws. So, like, they should have just backed down, but they'd put themselves in a position where it was like a big dick contest, you know, and they didn't want to. They didn't want to back out. So, this is the consequence, you know, like this absolute warfare on the streets of Sydney. But the people are resisting. You know, we'll hear from Josh about that. I think the other thing to say is that they want to send a message that the rest of the country should allow Herzog to go ahead unchallenged, because we know that, we think he's going to be in Canberra, possibly speaking to Parliament. He's definitely coming to Melbourne. By doing this, you know, in a place where police violence is the most normalized, they're sort of sending a message like, don't fuck with us, you know. And this was a place, like, they had snipers on the roofs of buildings in Sydney.
Fire.
You know, like
who are they going to use that against?
Yeah, so they were prepared to shoot Australian people to protect this war criminal coming in from another country. Like, it's quite incredible.
So we're going to go on to Josh Lees now. Josh Lees is an organiser with the Palestine Action Group and a member of New South Wales Socialists, long-term socialist activist. And Josh is going to talk to us about what's going on in New South Wales.
Yeah.
Riding out the party line.
Okay, Josh. Well, thanks so much for joining us again on the podcast. We love having you on every time.
And you're kind of famous. You boost our numbers.
Hello.
It's not altruistic.
And Jordan, thanks for joining us from home. I won't say what you should be doing right now.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
like doing the dishes or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Laundry.
But
Cleaning
Josh,
his bedroom, obviously.
Josh, I was listening to the radio this morning and listening to Radio National, and the journalist was interviewing a Greens local member member of Legislative Parliament, who had been near the men who were praying out the front of Sydney Town Hall that were just aggressively battered by the cops. She ended up in hospital because she was battered by the cops as well.
In a neck brace.
Yeah, Abigail Boyd. And I feel like it was that video was very shocking, but it seems to encapsulate a lot of what happened when the protest tried to wind up yesterday in Sydney. So could you tell us a bit about what was going on in Sydney at the anti-Herzog protest yesterday?
Yeah, it was pretty full on. So, I mean, the first thing to say is that we had about 20,000 people come out against Herzog, you know, possibly thousands more, because the cops were preventing people from getting in to join the main protest.
Yeah, I had a family friend who was trying to get in, and the cops, they looked like, you know, the CRS cops from France back in the day or something like that. Like, it was incredible. And they were saying, you can't come in, you've been given a move on notice.
Yeah. So that was it. We had like an hour of speeches, an absolutely huge crowd, you know, which is great because all those people turned up in defiance of all the kind of threats and so on that have been made against protesters by Premier Chris Minns, by the Murdoch press and so on, trying to say that the protest is illegal and all this bullshit. So it was a huge turnout, and that's really important. It shows what we've been saying all along, that this was the bloody popular will of people in Sydney, was to say we don't support genocide, we won't stand for it, we're not going to sit at home and do nothing while our freaking leaders parade around a guy who's incited genocide in Gaza. So that was a really wonderful turnout and a huge blow to their efforts to make this Herzog tour like a big, PR tour for Israel and all that. So it was very important and successful on that front. And then, so so there were some people obviously who wanted to march, like as we'd been demanding in the lead up, and as we had said all along, we're calling on the cops to get out of the way and let us march, even with all these extra police powers that Chris Minns had given them. It was still, the cops still had discretion that on the day they could choose not to enforce those powers. It would have been completely lawful for us to march in that context as we wanted to. And given the crowd was so huge, like that was kind of an obvious thing, where in any other circumstance, pretty much, and I've been in many circumstances like this, where even if you don't have official bloody approval or whatever, if you have a freaking huge rally like that, the cops are just like, okay, we can't stop you. We're just going to allow that to happen now.
It's the safest way to actually move people, is to coordinate it rather than just like kettle them.
Exactly. And it's just outrageous because like Chris Minns is trying to say today to justify all this police brutality that basically he's implying that if the cops didn't bash us and pepper spray us and all that we would have posed some threat to what he calls the mourners, the people attending the Herzog's event. But we were trying to march in the opposite bloody direction. So it's all a total furphy. Anyway, so that was going on, and then the cops prevented us from being able to march. The crowd wasn't quite, anyway, people wanted to, but they couldn't. The cops stopped them. And then as people were basically trying to disperse after that, the question was, where the hell do we go? Because there were police lines on all sides kettling people in. And then the police just started charging at people, riding horses into people, pepper spraying everyone. And it just escalated and escalated and escalated into like a real just frenzy of like police brutality. Like I've been to many protests. I'm not new to police brutality, but this is by far the worst I've ever seen, and on a much bigger scale than I've ever seen. And the stories, I mean, people will have seen probably some of the horrific videos of there's a guy just with his hands up in like a business suit just being absolutely pummeled by 2 or 3 riot cops. There's another guy on the ground already, 2 cops kneeling on him, and they're just punching him in the head and then repeatedly like kidney punching him.
And then there's ones where there's just like a line of police gathering and they just go, and then they all just fucking charge down the street. I think it's towards Hyde Park. Yeah, is that the direction?
I was there, in Bathurst Street. Yeah, that was full on. Like that
it looked like it had seen from Iran or something. Like it was like, whoa.
Yeah, and they were just relentless. Like they would just charge sprinting at people who were trying to like run away. And obviously they would catch up to a bunch of them and just like knock them to the ground, pepper spray them, arrest some, bash them. And then they would like pause for a second, form up their line again and charge again. And then one other thing about that is that people are fleeing into live traffic because they hadn't actually blocked the roads to cars.
Goodness.
So they're forcing people to like flee into like intersections where like garbage trucks are driving through, and they're still just charging and pepper spraying everyone. There's lots of stories of injuries. Like there's a 77-year-old guy who was basically violently arrested by the cops. He was punched. He reports that he still can't walk properly today. And then they arrested him and charged him with assault police, which is of course the classic story. Whenever the police assault someone, they charge the person they assaulted with assault police to try to
assault, hinder, resist.
Exactly. Yeah, and this guy they had to let go because there was footage obviously showing not. But so they bashed him, arrested him, injured him, and then held him in a police station for 5 hours. And that's stories like that all over the place. There's a woman who I believe is a 69-year-old woman who, like her daughter, from what I understand, says that she has 4 cracked vertebrae.
Oh my goodness.
Like her back is seriously fucked by the police brutality. There's the obviously the like insane racist images of the cops attacking Muslim men kneeling and praying. I know one of our fellow PAG organizers was just like up on the stage near where Abigail Boyd was attacked by the police. She was there with her 1-year-old baby as the police were attacking, and and arrested her like younger brother who was trying to defend the baby from the police. And they arrested him. He's like 16 years old. It was absolutely fucked up. So, and this is like, it's just like, how do you sum this up? This is like extreme state violence on the streets of Sydney in support of the state violence that Israel's done in Gaza. It's just so clear. and this is like Chris Minn's bringing fucking Donald Trump's America to Australia, like including the outright, like ludicrous justifications they're coming out with today. Like you may as well call us domestic terrorists, Trump style. Like, yeah. So people are kind of battered, bashed, pepper sprayed, but and a lot of shock because as I said, big crowd. This was not like some little rally of just the radical left, a couple of hundred of us who are used to being hit by police. This was like mass rally, heaps of like old people have come to they came to the Bridge March and they came to this kind of thing. And they are just like, holy hell. And there's all these reports of people being like, I always trusted the police. Now I'll never trust them again kind of thing. And yeah, but I think there's also a mood of just defiance. Like people are outraged and know that we were right to protest. And
because one of the things I feel like is that people expected the police to form like a really strong barrier between you guys and the Herzog events and whatever, and that's kind of like a minimum expectation. And so you kind of expect that, but then to be kettled and then brutalized when you're just trying to leave and exercise a peaceful protest is like so beyond the experience of the vast majority of attendees. A lot of people are really shocked by the Labor Party and Minns in particular. He seems to have become a real hate figure for the people involved in the movement who can see that he's gone above and beyond. Even Albanese, like he's taken it to the next step. This guy, he's so determined to prove himself, a loyal servant of empire. And he was praised by Tony Abbott. There was a tweet by Tony Abbott. We'll put it up on the screen. Like, that was a great move, Chris Minn. So good to see the police finally cracking down. Just all these disgusting right-wing scum. Like the Liberal opposition leaders basically like, yeah, we love you, Chris Minn. He's a really nice guy. So, he's clearly, it's like what Albo's doing federally, but even more extreme. Like he's taking the sort of centre-right and even more hard-right position. And just owning it, and that's shocking. That's shocking people. I got a message from a friend in the Labor left from years ago who said 3 members of his branch have resigned this morning after seeing what they saw last night and reading about it on the news. That's one branch of the Labor Party. So I think
you were saying similar stuff here, Jordy, that you'd heard people resigning as well.
Yeah, I think I was just like talking about Omar's thing, but you've got a point that you've made there, like with Tony Abbott kind of praising Chris Minns for this like crazy response. Like if we think about it, it's really only the Labor Party that can get away with doing stuff like this. Like it was the Labor Party that first sent in, soldiers to break strikes and stuff like that. Things that the Liberals have only dreamt of. And now it's the Labor Party doing this again. And if we look at who it's for as well, like Sky News was reporting live from the ICC as all of this was happening, and a senior police officer was addressing the crowd and addressing Herzog and whatever, being like, cool, the event's over, give us 30 minutes, we'll clear them out so you can leave safely. And then, the police riot happened and we saw them charge and we saw them do all of this insane shit to protect these people, and we have Labor to thank for it. But it is also nice to see that some Labor members do have a red line.
Yeah, and I think it's right to call it a police riot because this was extreme violence that was caused by the cops. And the other thing because Josh, maybe you could tell us a bit about this, because PAG attempted to stop the government from being able to use the major events like legislation or powers over the protest, but the courts ruled in favor of the government, which means that the cops, there's no accountability. People can't sue the police for the extreme violence that was meted out onto the protesters. So to me, it seems like what Chris Minns, the governments and the courts did was they looked at the cops and they said, do whatever the fuck you want to them.
Yeah, I mean, the powers they gave themselves are really extreme, which is why we were challenging them. It was outrageous. Like they just repurposed some old act they dug up called the Major Event Act, which is meant to be used for like sporting events. Like it was used for like the women's Olympic Games or whatever. No, not whatever it is. The Women's World Cup, I think it was. Some other sporting event, And so it's clearly, if you read the thing, it's clearly got that in mind. I mean, it's crap legislation anyway, but it's clearly got that in mind. It talks about people who have tickets and whatever to control those kinds of events.
And it says in it can't be used for political protests.
Yeah, exactly. So what they've done is just take this thing and then declare Herzog's entire visit a major event, and then declare the area that covers all of the north of all of the Sydney CBD, basically, where millions of people work and live and all the rest of it. And within that entire area, the police just have these nuts powers to deal with protesters, but also like anyone, they can stop and search people. And if you refuse to do that, they can expel you from the area. Even if you live there, like, so, etc.
Yeah, that guy in Bondi.
Yeah, who said shame. He gave a really good interview, basically saying, like, anybody who doesn't think that man should feel shame is a problem. Like, I stand by my words, etc. But the other thing about the court is that the judge didn't give reasons for why they, ruled against you, which, can be because it needs to be like it's a quick decision or whatever. But to me, it's like, if you're going to allow the cops to bash people with impunity, there should be some reasoning behind that.
You probably just shouldn't let them bash them.
Oh, yeah.
I know, like I don't know how much I'm allowed to say about the court ruling, but it was bad. And
it seemed bad early on, yeah. Like the live feed from the SMH was like, at 12 o'clock, the judge was like, I don't think it's reasonable to say that the government's trying to repress protests. I think they're actually just concerned about.
Yeah, he said at one point that you, if I understand correctly, that you can't make an argument, to our side, to our lawyers, that assumes that like police will act unreasonably. Of course, they act reasonably. All your examples about how the police could abuse these powers. Well, that's not an argument. They would never do that.
Yeah.
So we were. It was an uphill battle, shall we say? There is the possibility. I mean, because like everything we argued in that, where our lawyers argued in that case, was then obviously proven to be true by what happened last night. So
looking forward to reading his
reason.
How
he can.
There's a question now. There's a question now of if we, could appeal the thing, which would then allow people to actually have their right to sue the cops and all the rest of it for the violence they've suffered. So
because that is the crazy part of the act, like Section 62 of the act is. What's it called? I've got it here. I read it this morning. Compensation not payable in respect of major event-related matters. And it's like you cannot sue, like the state, an employee of the state, a local council cannot sue or cannot be compensated. Like no one can be compensated from these people, the state and whatsoever, for an act or omission that is a major event-related matter or directly realizes or
so like the laws of the country are basically thrown out when there's like a major sporting event.
Yeah, you just can't sue these people. It's
exactly.
insane.
And again, that was the argument made by our lawyers. Like there's all these other bits of legislation that actually cover protests, the restrictions on police's ability to use move on powers to suppress protests, etc. And then they've just declared this thing which just overrides every other thing. And they were like, that's fine. That's fine because of Bondi. That was pretty much the argument, which is outrageous. Because again, the whole thing was tied up in this idea that because of this horrific attack at Bondi, therefore we just need extraordinary powers to deal with the threat of terrorism. Oh, and I'm not saying you're terrorists, man. No. But like that exists, and therefore we have to ban protests. Like. That's my paraphrasing of the argument, but that's the world we're in now, as we know, where they're just going to try to use this to justify every attack on democratic rights. So
and Josh, what's the mood in Sydney amongst the sort of Palestine movement? Do people feel resolved to keep, fighting for Palestine? What's the impact of yesterday's protest been, or is it too early to say?
I think. Yes, definitely. The resolve was there. I mean, you can see in the numbers that came out. That was one of the things. It was like bigger than we were expecting. I mean, I knew it would be big, but that's a lot of people who came out in defiance of all this atmosphere. So, that in and of itself. And then the response to the police violence has been, I don't know, from what I can see, just wall-to-wall outrage and kind of
Yeah.
shock. And we've called a rally tonight outside the Surrey Hills police station, which I think would be
Classic venue for a protest.
pretty big. Well, we kind of wanted to protest at Parliament because we do want to. Okay, we blame the cops, but we also do blame Chris Minns.
Yeah.
You know, like who has created this whole regime, and he's the one who really unleashed the cops and all that. But the Parliament, of course, is in the banned protester
The
zone.
no democracy zone.
The no democracy zone.
Oh
Yeah, the
my
Parliament's in the
God.
no democracy zone, so you can't even protest.
It's really
Parliament.
like it's in Victoria when we were having a lot of weekly Palestine protests, but then especially after the anti-fascist counter protests that we did when there were like literal Nazis marching in the streets. One of the things that like ex-Labor politicians and current like Labor and COP people were arguing for was you can only protest in the park or out in the sort of outer parts of the city. And we were like, what a fucking joke. Like, this is, but it's like in Sydney, this is literally what's happened. Like I was watching an interview with the like police commissioner or police chief or whoever it was. And he was like, well, yeah, they can go to Hyde Park. It's like, I thought your response in that interview was really good, which is like, how dare you shunt us off? We demand to be in the city. But I think that it is just quite a remarkable attack on the right to protest. I was listening to a 7 a.m. podcast episode about the Herzog demonstrations. And, you know, they asked the question, are civil liberties really under attack? And, you know, through the course, it's like, it's not a bad sort of thing, but it's like, there needs to be rage around this, like rage around the idea that the government can say you aren't allowed to protest in the CBD. If you do come into the CBD, we will punch you in the kidneys, we'll punch you in the head, we'll pepper spray children, and then we can get away with it. Like this needs to be a galvanizing moment for people and a bit of a kind of opening the curtains on how bad like things have actually gotten.
Yeah, someone shared a tweet that was like, it's fake. It's a fake tweet from Chris Minn saying, we're going to keep beating people up until there's social cohesion. And that's kind of like, that's the sort of default setting now in New South Wales. Like this was just premeditated intimidation, explicitly anti-democratic, explicitly like no one is allowed to oppose what we're doing here. You know, like it's so blatant. And it's, a lot of people I think Australia is like different to the rest of the world, different to America, you know, like Minneapolis, ICE. But then after last night, a lot of people were commenting, this looks like, you know, ICE. This is a scene from Minneapolis, which I think is the correct connection to make.
Yeah, and exactly. And that's what's so infuriating about a bunch of the it's Chris Minn's line, but also the media line like today is like, oh, well, why didn't you just go to Hyde Park then? You know, you were told you couldn't protest. You were told you couldn't march. Why didn't you just... And it's like, yeah, we were told by the freaking people setting up an authoritarian state to support genocide. Should we just agree with that? Like, it's just outrageous.
Yeah.
Like, no, at some point you have to just say, we're not going to back down to every demand on protesters. We're going to actually say, fuck you. We have the right to protest. We have the right to march. And yeah, imagine if everyone in like Minnesota just sat at home and allowed ICE to terrorize people. No, people have to come out and take a stand. And when something like Isaac Herzog is touring the country, like, if we just back down completely, we're not going to do that. Like,
most influential things are illegal. Like, you can't strike. It's illegal to go on strike. Like, it's illegal to occupy public spaces most of the time. You know, like basic democratic rights have always been illegal before they've been legal. Like, you couldn't vote. You know, how do people win the right to vote? It wasn't by like petitioning the like 1% of the public who could vote and saying, please give us the right to vote.
Or standing in Hyde Park making sure no one could see or hear them.
Exactly. But like, I'm excited about the protest tonight. Like, I think it's a really good response. Like, and the Surrey Hills cop shop, for people who don't know Sydney, it looks like a bunker. It's like, you know that thing in Lord of the Rings, in the last one, where like the humans are like cooped up in that white castle thing. It's like that, but like with Soviet brutalism. Like it's designed to be impenetrable. It's like this monstrous kind of wall where like you could imagine snipers like killing everyone out the front and stuff. And it's
hopefully
also
that doesn't.
And it's also
we're trying to describe like Gondor or something. Like,
exactly. And it's also
more Mount Doom than it is Gondor.
Maybe.
But it's got the all seeing eyes, all the security cameras.
Exactly. It's like you're at the front of like a Russian Soviet era monstrosity. But it's also a really politically like historic site, right? That's where like am I right? Is that where the Mardi Gras, like the first Mardi Gras people went after they got arrested and stuff?
I think that was actually
I thought that was
King's
Oxford
Police
Street.
Station,
King's
whatever it's
Cross.
called, Darlinghurst. That's where they took the guy who they were bashing nearly to death. But there was protests outside. Yeah,
Pete Murray. But we have
yeah,
had
Surrey
numerous
Hills is
protests
infamous.
there. We have
Yeah,
had
yeah.
numerous protests there, and yeah, it's a good one, and it's an important time, And one thing to be said as well, like we've been critical about the Greens on this pod for like a variety of reasons, which I think are all valid, but they really put themselves on the lines last night. Like the number of Greens MPs, like literally on the front lines, either arguing with the police or like literally getting beaten up by the police. Like that's what the left needs to do at times like this, and I think hopefully the left can respond in a unified way tonight. Have you guys had much like supportive media or whatever about your response? Like,
It's very mixed. I mean, we did a press conference with the Greens this morning. It's like, I don't know. On the one hand, they can't avoid showing some of the videos, and it's just, and I had a lot of reporters on the ground who themselves were getting pepper sprayed.
Yeah, exactly.
Bashed. I think some of them even got arrested. As is often the case, though, like even when they have journalists on the ground getting violated and brutalized, it doesn't mean that necessarily is reflected in the editorial line. So yeah, I mean, there's all the usual bullshit, as I said, where they just basically today they're running the kind of both sides line. Oh, it clashes, and maybe they should have done something different, which is pretty terrible because like this is not a situation where both sides are to blame. This is like pretty blatant police, a frenzy of police violence against protesters. So yeah.
Well, we are happy that the Palestine movement continues in New South Wales. We're going to be protesting again in Melbourne over the next couple of days. I believe there's a demonstration planned against Peter Khalil.
Tomorrow at 3 p.m.
Because, the people of Brunswick want to show the local Labor MP that we're unhappy that, their government has invited Isaac Herzog to town. Yeah, if Chris Minns came here, fuck. But then also we're going to have Isaac Herzog in town in Melbourne on Thursday. So there's going to be a snap protest meeting at 3:00 at the Southern Cross station. So if you're listening in Melbourne and you're feeling fired up, come along to the demonstration. Thanks so much, Josh, for making time. I'm sure you've got a million media engagements and phone calls and all the rest of it. So we appreciate it.
None more important than this, Anneke.
Yeah, I agree.
Riding out the party line.
Okay, so a lot of people were shocked by the scenes of police in New South Wales violently attacking the protest, but in particular, the attack on a group of Muslim men praying on the ground. Clearly no threat to anyone. And so to get a Muslim community's perspective on this disgusting event, we've invited Ghaith Krayem of Muslim Votes Matter. He's a national spokesperson for the group, which has done a lot of advocacy, put out statements around a range of issues in the last few years. So thanks for joining us, Ghaith.
Thanks, Ghaith.
No, pleasure. It's disappointing that it's for this purpose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the video was just absolutely horrific of the way that the police treated Muslim men praying. Could you tell us a bit about the violence that the Muslim community experienced at the protest on Monday?
Sure. Look, I'm happy to. And again, look, I think what was more horrific, and I'll come back to your question, was listening to the Premier this morning when he went out and did the rounds of the media. The Premier of New South Wales literally said that those men who are praying, they're on the ground praying in conducting a very spiritual function, that they were the provocation for the violence.
Yeah.
Like he literally said that, and that really sums up, I guess, the culture that has been emerging in the public space for some time. Last night didn't happen in isolation. Last night happened as a culmination of the dehumanization and the demonization of the Muslim community in this country for some time,
Yeah.
and certainly since post Bondi, right? The
Mm.
way in which the rhetoric has been ramped up, it's not surprising that it happened. What did catch us a little by surprise, what certainly caught me by surprise, is that it was actually happened by the police and not by a third party, right? Clearly, the police were under direction. When you look at the video, the police were there for some time before these men started praying. So it wasn't just men, by the way; it was men and women.
Yeah.
And the police were there for some time. They watched them get ready to pray. They watched them start the prayer. After they started the prayer, the police then went through and did what they did. It's just unbelievable. So clearly, this was a planned thing from the police's perspective. Right? Somebody gave a direction that they needed to step in there. Now, the police know what was going on. They know what this prayer was. They know how that these take very short periods of time, that they've seen people pray at public events for decades. These people were not a threat to anybody, let alone the police. They were literally on their hands and on their their knees and hands.
Yeah.
It's just outrageous, and the level of anger right now. I've been around community for 30 plus years, and I have never ever seen the level of anger that exists right now, right in this moment. And if our political leadership does not come out and deal with this in a responsible way, then I'm really concerned. I really am, because right now the Muslim community feels that it has zero place in society. If the people who are meant to protect us conduct themselves in that way, who is going to protect us from all the... And there's been literally thousands of them. Threats have come across to our community since Bondi. Like even last week, there was another round. I can't share the details, but there was another round of letters went around to key organisations, which are clearly demonstrating a desire to cause harm out there.
Yeah.
While they've been...
And there was some targeting of the Lakemba Mosque a while back, like multiple...
Well, the thing that it wasn't just the Lakemba Mosque. That was what was in the public. But that same letter by the same person went to a number of organisations. Last week, there was another round of letters that went again to a number of organisations. Now, obviously, the community then goes to the police and says, look, this is what's happened. And the police say, absolutely, we'll look into it. But then last night, we see the very same police.
Exactly.
So if that's the attitude to our community, what faith can we possibly have that they will take these other threats seriously?
Well, I heard a story that there was a meetup following Bondi with a bunch of imams and religious leaders from across the country, and that the police basically read them the Riot Act and told them, you need to police your own communities, and did not take any questions, were not interested in discussion or feedback, but just purely a one-way berating of the community. I mean, this kind of disrespect would not happen to any other religious group, and does reflect the systematic oppression and sort of alienation, dehumanization of the Muslim community in particular.
Yeah, look, I know the meaning you're talking about. I wasn't there, but I heard the same feedback as you've just shared, and I've heard it from a number of different sources, so I'm pretty confident that's exactly what happened. That the police commissioner basically came in, as you say, berated them in a very condescending manner, and then walked out. Didn't even offer to answer any questions. This idea that, what's really concerning is this is the same trend that we saw post Bondi, but on steroids. Post 9/11, but on steroids, right? So really after Bondi, as horrific as that was, it was politicized almost immediately, and we had the immediate connection between that terror attack and the anti-genocide movement, and then the chants at the rallies. But then they moved very quickly to ISIS, as it always does. But then that connection completely fell apart in the Philippines, and then it just moved to Islamic extremism and now the Muslim community, and that happened in the space of weeks. And is it any wonder then that we are where we are, and we get this absolute hollow rhetoric from Albanese down to Minn's all the way through around social cohesion. But if this is what social cohesion means, what you're saying to my community is social cohesion means it's everybody else without you. That's what they're saying to our community.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the point that you've made about the dehumanization of the Muslim community is really important because especially the discussion post Bondi has been to equate, as you've said, people who are against genocide and people who are of Muslim faith with a disgusting terrorist attack. And this has the effect of basically smearing everybody with the brush of this disgusting attack. And I think that legitimizes individual attacks on Muslim people in the community. It legitimizes the disgusting letters that have been sent to mosques. It legitimizes people leaving pig heads in Muslim cemeteries, and it legitimizes the violence that the police meted out. And I think it's really important to push back against this disgusting, dehumanizing attack because, like you said, there's actually been decades of Islamophobia that has been directed from the top of society. Omar and I have been involved in campaigns against racism and against Islamophobia, and I feel like it's never been so strong in the media as it is right now.
And the fact that the whole Muslim community is like, why did this meeting with the imams happen? I mean, they didn't organize the massacre of Bondi. Was there a meeting with every Christian leader in Australia after the guy shut up Christchurch? I mean, it's just ludicrous. No other community is held to this standard. And that's the assumption that somehow everybody who's Muslim is accountable for the actions of every single person who's Muslim.
Yeah, Ahmad, because in that context, we serve a purpose. We have a role to play. And that role is not of our choosing. And the system says you are either the compliant, acquiescent, good Muslim, and your role here is to tick the box when we say we've consulted, or you are the stereotypical angry extremist. And they're the only choices the system gives us. Where a lot of the recent stuff is happening is we don't accept that any longer. We are creating a voice and a role for ourselves as a community. And we will not just sit by idly and allow things to take place like they have historically. And a big part of last night was, although this footage focused on our community, that by far and away the majority of people at that protest, not just in Sydney but across the country, were non-Muslims, right?
Yeah.
We were a tiny proportion of that. So in that sense, it was also very gratifying to see the support, not just for the Palestinian cause, but also for our people on the ground. A lot of the voices you hear in that video about people calling out, look, they're just praying, are actually non-Muslims who had been standing around. So what we're seeing is not the view of most Australians. It is actually a structural issue. It is the inherent racism that exists in our structures. And in Sydney, for example, I think there was 3 or 4 First Nation speakers at that particular protest. And it's just symbolic of where this country is, that we refuse to acknowledge our own racist past because if we do that, we've got to really face into some stuff. And if we don't do that, we will not stop the racist future that's still playing out.
Yeah, that we're seeing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things you mentioned, Ghaith, was that it was not just men who were praying, but it was also women. And women are often the most visible members of the Muslim community because often they wear hijabs and the like. Has there been an increase of sort of Islamophobic attacks towards Muslim women in the aftermath of Bondi?
Oh, absolutely. So the last figure I saw, which probably doesn't include anything that happened in the last few days, is the incidence of Islamophobic events post-Bondi has gone up by about 700%. Now, that's post-Bondi, not post-October 23, where we'd already seen something like a 1,400% increase, right? And the statistics tell us about 80 to 85% of all Islamophobic incidents occur against women. Right? So it's the women who are visibly out there who are the brunt of most of those day-to-day type things, as opposed to the structural type of things we're talking about. But the real worry about something like last night is you have somebody out in the street who is already thinking ill thoughts about Muslims and Muslim women in particular, and saw that last night and thinks, well, if the police can do it, well, why
That's
shouldn't
right.
I do it?
Yeah.
So without a
Exactly.
doubt, we're going to see more incidents of people being spat at, of women having their hijab ripped off, of
Yeah.
people driving past shouting abuse. And the problem is a lot of people now become jaded to that. So I suspect even those stats I've given you are significantly underreported.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And you can imagine, like, if this was happening to other communities, and in particular at the moment the Jewish community, which obviously we would be against, but the reporting of anti-Semitic incidents is so much more magnified than the attention that Islamophobic attacks receive. And in the media, in fact, there's actually a narrative that, you know, it's appalling that every time people talk about anti-Semitism, they also talk about Islamophobia and other racism, and they say you're equating. But actually, it is an interest to equate, because we're against all forms of racism, and we're against the hypocrisy,
Yeah.
which upholds certain instances and certain, you know, oppression, which is real, and ignores others. You know, and so our side is the one that is on the moral high ground. We stand in principle against all forms of discrimination, and actually, it's the establishment who are selective and hypocritical in what they see as oppression. You know, and that's a fundamentally important point that we have to keep coming back to.
Yeah, look, absolutely. I mean, this isn't a battle as to whose grief is greater or whose racism is worse, right? The reality is, if we were doing that, then we would be talking about nothing other than First Nations. Like that's just the truth. Our First Nations still, to this day, are subjected to far more racism, structural and direct, than either my community or the Jewish community. I've got no doubt about that whatsoever. But you're spot on. I mean, this is about tackling racism generally, and the exceptionalization of one form over another, in fact, makes the racism even worse.
I agree. Yeah.
And the way in which the political establishment, the mainstream media, and the public narrative is using this to support an international genocide, because that's what's happening here, right? Is just appalling, right? They are completely manipulating events so that our opposition to the ethnic cleansing of a whole population, that the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people, is minimized and diminished. That's what this is about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Agreed.
Well, I think that you're spot on. The situation is absolutely terrible, but I agree with, I think the thing that you said about a lot of the people who are at these demonstrations are not just Muslim people, but the broader community, is something to hold on to as a picture of hope, because we're going to need a mass united movement of Muslim people, of Christians, of Jewish people, of non-religious people, of Indigenous people, all together pushing back against the racism of the government, the repression of the police and the government, and to fight against the genocide that's taking place in Palestine. So I feel heartened in the same way.
If I can just share this little anecdote with you to finish
Please.
off. Obviously, the community put out a joint statement today. So MVM organised for a joint statement of community organisations to go out. We're now at nearly 200 endorsements of that statement. But we received an email from a gentleman in Adelaide who's a non-Muslim and said, look, I saw that footage last night, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, I just want to say the Muslim community needs to go out there and pray even more in public spaces, and I will be the first person who comes and stands in front of you to prevent anything like that happening again.
How beautiful.
That's great.
That's social cohesion. That's what social cohesion is.
Yeah.
Not what Minn is talking about up in New South Wales.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your insights with us, and thanks so much for the work that you've been doing. And I'm sure we'll see you on the streets.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Riding out the party line.
It was really excellent to hear from both Josh and Ghaith from Muslim Votes Matters about what's going on in New South Wales.
Yeah, I mean, like, we're putting this ep out like an hour after the last one comes out, but it's like things are moving fast, and I guess part of the point of this pod is to be able to offer some explanation of what's going on and hear from people on the ground and in the community. So I hope our listeners enjoy it. You know, this week of action that's taking place around Australia, It's a call to arms. It's also an exposition of what kind of society we really live in. You know, one where war criminals get faded and people protesting out the front get hit with, you know, tear gas, chemical weapons. I mean, if you'd read a science fiction, like this is literally like a science fiction story, like the great and the good, you know, like politicians, the wealthy, the media, all hanging out in this like air-conditioned, beautiful, modern lecture theatre, clapping politely while war crimes are being blushed over. And on the outside, the masses just being treated like dogs, you know. Like,
it sort of feels like they wouldn't dare to make another sort of like Hunger Games-esque movie at the moment because it would give people too many ideas about, you know, what they could do to resist and fight back. But I think, you know, Ghaith at the end of the interview talked about a man from Adelaide saying that he'd protect Muslim people if they wanted to pray. And I wanted to share a story with listeners because I think it is really beautiful and gives us a bit of a picture of what kind of movement we need to fight back against all of this bullshit. In 2011, when there was the Egyptian revolution in Tahrir Square, it was this like melting pot of all different types of people, different layers of society, women, men, Muslim, Christians. They all experienced the same kind of police brutality and violence because they were trying to get rid of a dictator. And there was this particular moment where Muslim people were praying and were being battered by the police and thugs on camels. And the Christian participants of Tahrir Square surrounded the Muslim people praying to protect them from the violence. And obviously we're not in a revolution and we're not experiencing counter-revolutionary violence. But I think in these moments of resistance, you see the potential for, or you can draw these historical links and they can give you a bit of a sense of the way that we can fight back and why solidarity is just so important.
Absolutely. I mean, like I think we just did see counter-revolutionary violence. Like it was pure reaction to defend an absolute war criminal. Like, so yeah, but these moments of solidarity give you hope. We've had a little example here in Australia as well. Like when I was very new to the socialist movement, there was a prayer room being shut down at RMIT, and the Socialist Club at RMIT was the only club to support the Muslim Student Society in demanding a prayer room be built of a sufficient size. And they did prayers every Friday for I can't remember how long. It was months outside in the rain, in the sun, whatever. And we stood with them and supported them. And you know, they appreciated that because, like it's easy to stand with against oppression in history. You know, like everyone's against the Holocaust now. Everyone's against, you know, really bad things that have happened in the past. It's much harder to identify and stand with the oppressed live, you know, when it's in your time. And for a long time, Muslim people in Australia have been one of those oppressed groups. And it is hardening to see the attacks that we saw in Sydney become quite a flashpoint. Like there's widespread calls now, which the Palestine Action Group are echoing, that the police commissioner has to resign. Can you imagine if cops attacked a Jewish prayer ceremony? I mean, it wouldn't happen. It couldn't. It's unimaginable. It couldn't happen, you know. And or if they busted into like St. Patrick's Cathedral somewhere and just like started arresting people
on like Easter Sunday or something.
Like it's you know. So this tells you that this is an oppressed minority who the state feels like it can go after to set an example. So yeah, we have to stand with them, and I think it's right that people are doing that, and it's inspiring, and hopefully the movement can continue to build these kind of links.
And, you know, we 100% back the calls for Chris Minns and the police commissioner to resign.
Yeah, Minns as well.
There needs to be political repercussions for brutalising innocent protesters. And I think that it's super important that our listeners take that sort of message of hope and of the need for continuous and continuing
defiance,
struggle and protest, because it's the only way we're going to win. It's the only way we're going to push back against this stuff. I like the sort of the feeling of like be ungovernable. I think maybe it's something that the anarchists say a bunch of the time, but it's like it is what we need. We need to say we're not going to let you do this shit. We're not going to let you pass laws that are going to send us to jail for 2 or 5 or 15 years for standing with Palestine. We're going to stay in the streets because we know that we're on the right side of history.
Yeah, and the crucial thing is to do it in numbers, because individuals can be targeted, can be fucked over. Like it's not radical to be an individual doing something, transgressive. What's radical is building a mass movement, ultimately a working class movement, but for now, a mass movement that can, through the force of numbers, impose our will and win our rights.
Yeah.
And the reality is, in New South Wales, we were probably close to being able to do that. And especially if the left was bigger, because, the left understands what the police are about. We understand police brutality. We have our strategies for responding. The average punter doesn't. So the stronger the left is, the more organized we are, especially when trade unions are involved, the more power we have to shut shit down. Yes, they can brutalize protesters. They can't force people to work.
Yeah.
Like in an ideal scenario, there would be a strike in Sydney happening this week. That's not happening because the union movement, unfortunately, are slavishly loyal to the Labor government. But that is the kind of response that can happen. We've seen it in Minneapolis. We've seen it in America. That's the kind of thing we need to be working for and towards in Australia.
So get involved with the socialist movement. Make sure you're at the next protest in your city, and like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe.
Ciao.
Oh, my darling, oh, my darling, oh, my darling party line. Oh, I never will forsake thee, for I love this life of mine.